The Actor's Audition Journal was something I came up with for myself when I first got to New York to start my theater career. I was auditioning on a fairly regular basis at the time, and I wasn't happy with how my auditions were working out. First of all, it was so overwhelming, the whole event of an audition, from the very beginning when you get the phone call to when you walk out of the room. And I couldn't quite figure out where I was making mistakes, because I knew that in the end, when I was actually doing my audition piece or my sides, it just wasn't quite where I wanted it to be. So I did two things. The first thing was I broke down the event that we call an audition into 5 pieces, or 5 parts. The first part is when you get the initial call about the project and the specifics for the audition. The second part would be your preparation for the audition. The third part is what I call the audition day, from the time you wake up till right before the moment you walk into the room or walk on stage to do the audition. Then, of course, the fourth part is the audition itself. And then the last part is the follow-up, or wrap-up of the audition, so you can sort of, close the door on that one and get ready for the next audition. The next thing I did was I went out and I got myself just a journal with lined paper. And I developed a series of questions about each of those 5 parts, so that later on, after the audition was finished, maybe that evening when I was back in my apartment, I would go through those questions very carefully, and I'd write down my responses to them. And what I discovered immediately were that patterns were emerging. And it helped me identify where I was making mistakes or not doing everything that I could do to prepare and do the audition itself. So there are 7 big questions that we'll go over for this audition journal. And within each of the 7 questions are some smaller questions, and we'll work through those. And hopefully you can start your own journal, and it'll do for you what it did for me, which was make my auditions a whole lot better, it made me much more confident as an actor. So when I walked in the room, I knew that I had done everything I possibly could to get ready for that audition. So let's get started. So question number 1 really revolves around part number 1, and it is, did you ask all the relevant information about the audition and the project, the who, what, when, where, how, why of the project? And it really starts off with, what are the dates of the job, the rehearsal part and the performance part? You need to know, because there might be a conflict. You might realize that in the middle of the performance run, you might have to go off and do some other thing for a day or two. And you need to know that up front. And so you can tell them up front if you have a conflict. You also need to ask, was it a union job or a non-union job? This would affect whether or not you want to turn union or not. If you're trying to get, say, your points so that you can get your equity card, or maybe you're at a point with your Screen Actors Guild membership where you're a must-join, meaning the next time you do a union job, you must join SAG, and perhaps you don't feel you're ready yet. So if you know you're auditioning for a union job, or you've been offered the audition, you might want to put that in the mix to see, do you even go to the audition? What audition times are available? And this is really important for a couple of reasons. If you have a day job, you'll probably have figured out when is the best time for you to take off work to go to an audition. For me, it was always lunchtime. I would work in the morning, and then I'd leave at lunchtime and, go to the audition. And when I got back, I just, would get right back to work and finish out the day. But you might have a situation where you can't take off during the day. You can only audition in the evenings, perhaps. Or you might have an evening job, which would actually be better. If you have a night job, then you have your days free. But then it gets into something, what I call trying to find the sweet spot of your day, that time of the day when you are the most awake, mentally and physically. If you work at nights and you know you don't even get out of bed till 10 o'clock in the morning, perhaps auditioning from, say, 2 to 4 is a good time for you. Well, if you can get a time slot within that framework, great. You'll be really awake and on your game when you get there. Where is the audition taking place? I always try to get the exact address with zip code, so I can do a Google Map or a Yahoo or a MapQuest or something, so I can know exactly how to get there. But I also ask that question because just because I'm auditioning for Theater X doesn't mean the auditions are taking place there. Or I'm auditioning through a casting office. I might be going to, the production office of a film, or the theater may have rented out a rehearsal space somewhere else, and that's important to know. Also, a good side question to ask if you have to drive to the audition is parking an issue? Because if you have to come downtown and you realize that parking on the street is really no-go, you want to be able to know there's a parking garage around the corner or something. The next question would be, what is the name and number of the contact person on the day of the audition? Now, your agent or the casting office may say, well, just call us if you're running late or if there's a problem. That's fine. But sometimes on an audition, they have set aside an assistant to field phone calls, so actors can call in and let them know if there's a problem, if they're running late or whatever. Are the sides available, and how do you get them? Via email? Can you come by and pick them up? Right? If you're auditioning for a known project like Hamlet, you can go out obviously and buy the script. But if it's a new play or a film or a TV show, the odds on you laying your hands on a complete copy are pretty slim. You're most likely just going to get a character breakdown and just the sides for the audition. But it's worth asking. They may say, yeah, you can read the entire play, but you have to come here to the theater. We have a copy handy. Or if you come by the production office, we can do the same thing. Never hurts to ask. Finally, are there any special requirements for the audition, such as props or clothes or some kind of physical thing you might have to do? Two quick stories. I auditioned for a fireman once in a training film about fire safety, and in it I was teaching high school students how to use a fire extinguisher. And I read that in the script, and so I went out before the audition and I went to a place that sold safety equipment and had the salesman teach me how to use the fire extinguishers. So when I went into the audition, I was already comfortable with that fire extinguisher, and I got the job. Also, the second story would be, I've auditioned for several westerns over the years, movies, and if I know going into the audition that I'm probably going to have to do some kind of horseback riding, I'll go take a lesson and brush up on it. So you just never know. It never hurts to ask. Oftentimes the audition, of course, will be you on the stage doing your monologue or in front of a camera, but you just never know. So now that you know the who, what, when, where, how, and why of the audition, you're ready to start the next part, which is the preparation of the audition.